Okay, now on to part 2 of the Unity Maze project. I'm going to open up the level 1 scene right here. I got this open, that's good. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to right click over here in this hierarchy. I'm going to create a 3D object and I'm going to call it terrain right there. Okay, so that's going to be kind of like our ground, and I'll show you how to modify that in a little bit. I'm also going to, this main camera right here, I'm going to right click on that and I'm going to hit delete because we don't want the main camera. And I'm going to come over here to assets. I'm going to double click on standard assets, double click on characters, double click on first person, double click on prefabs, find the first FPS controller right there, FPS controller, and drag that up onto there. That's going to create a basically a person that we can use using the FPS standard FPS controls. And I'm just going to kind of zoom out here. I'm using the middle mouse button on my mouse, the scroll wheel, and I'm kind of scrolling that around. And I'm just going to kind of move this guy into the center of the terrain. It doesn't have to be exact, and I'm moving him up just a little bit on here. It doesn't have to be crazy high. Now, in terms of like how I'm like scrolling back and forth like this, I'm holding down the middle mouse button. So the middle mouse button will allow me to pan left and right. The scroll wheel allows me to zoom in and out. But let's say that I like totally like went over here and I'm like, how do I just go back to my first person controller? If you double click on this, it'll automatically zoom into that person. If I wanted to see like the whole terrain, if I double click on terrain, it'll kind of zoom out like that so that I can see the whole terrain right here. You always want to make sure that you are in the perspective view right there. You notice right there that changed to ISO. You want to make sure that this says PERSP right there. And then in order to get like a different angle on something, let me double click on this first person controller. I can the left mouse button. I'm sorry, it's the right mouse button. I can click and hold that, and that will pan around so that I can like look at different angles and stuff. Okay, so anyway, let me zoom out here. And what I've basically created right now is, I'll kind of show you, when I hit the play button right here, I kind of fall down to the ground, and I can use WASD to kind of walk around. Now, I have to hit the escape key on my keyboard to be able to press that unplay button. By the way, don't hit the pause button on this. Don't play and then like walk around and then hit pause and then modify scripts. While this is playing up here, you can't, if you make any modifications to your scene or add anything on, it won't be saved. So we always want to make sure that we unpress that play button. Okay, so basically I've added my terrain in there and I've added my first person controller in there. Okay, so on my terrain, I'm going to go ahead and click on that terrain right there, and we're going to add a few things. The first thing that we're going to add is we're going to add a texture. So I need to click on this paintbrush right here. Okay, and then it says no terrain textures defined. So I'm going to click on this edit textures right here, add texture. We want to add a 2D texture right here. So I click on that, and I can just type in here grass, okay? And we should see this like grass hill right here. So I'm going to double click on that and hit add. What that'll do is that should add this texture to kind of this whole thing. Okay, that's exactly what I wanted. So now when I play, I'm just kind of walking on this grass right here. Okay, hit the escape button, hit play. Now, I actually want to like make a little bit of rocky area on here, so I'm going to go ahead and click on Edit Textures, add a texture, select, and let's find, if I type in grass again, notice I get this grass rock right there. I'm going to go ahead and actually click on that one and hit add. Now that doesn't apply to this whole thing, but what I can do now is I can increase this brush size right here. The opacity is how basically strong it is or how much it's going to overwrite, and you can see there's a number of different textures on here. I actually kind of like these different textures, and I can just kind of click in this area. I need to make sure that I've selected this one right there, and I can just kind of click, and you'll notice like, see how I'm able to like click on different areas? Now I might want to lower this opacity just a little bit and kind of just click around. I can also change the brush right there. So I'm just kind of making some rocky areas, okay? Just giving this a little bit of a different kind of grassy area right here. Okay, so now let's say I wanted to add in a different texture, a different kind of like um, a different like look to this. So my look, this is my look right now, and I'm looking specifically at the ground. Let's say I wanted to add in just a little bit different. So I can go to, let me open up Google. I'm going to go ahead and type in grass texture, and I can actually import really any of these. Okay, so if I wanted like a really rocky rock texture, if I wanted like a really rocky area, I can kind of find a rocky area too. So I kind of like, you're looking for something that, because this is going to be kind of patterned, so we don't necessarily want to see edges to it. I think something like this actually might look pretty good. So I'm going to right click on this, save image as, and you should be saving this to your U drive. I'm going to save this in my documents folder and in Maze Game. And then I'm going to double click on the Maze Game, and then I'm going to double click on assets, and then I'm going to double click on materials, and I'm going to save it in here. So this just saved. You'll notice now when I go to assets, materials, I see that material right there. Let's say though that you saved this to your U drive and you saved it to the wrong spot. I'll go ahead and grab another texture too. Maybe I want like, I don't know, this one right here. So you gotta kind of watch out for this. You notice at the bottom of this image it doesn't look very good. So maybe something like this actually might look okay. Kind of like this. So notice this one has like, this one has, alright, I'll just use this one. Right click, save image as, and I'm just going to save this one to the wrong spot. So I'm just going to save it to my desktop. Let's say you saved yours to your U drive. Okay, so in order to import that one that I just saved to the wrong spot, I would go to Assets, Import New Asset, and then I need to find where I saved that. So I know that I saved mine to my desktop, but you need to still know where you're saving your items to. So I save mine to my desktop, I hit Import. So it automatically imported it to the materials, which is awesome. But let's say that it didn't. Let's say that it imported right to the assets folder. I need to make sure that I drag this into my materials. Alright, so now that I've imported a couple different materials, I got these rocky things. I'm going to click back on my terrain right here. I'm going to click on Edit Textures, Add Texture, and I can just drag these things up into here and hit Add right there, and then Edit Texture, Add Texture, and I can drag this one up in there too and hit Add. Okay, so now these, I can click on like this rocky area right here. I'm actually going to do kind of mountains along the edges. So I might want to increase my opacity a little bit, really increase the brush size of this thing. I'm just going to kind of use this, and I'm going to kind of go on the edges of this. Now notice if you hold down the mouse, it gets really edit, undo, edit, undo, edit, undo, edit, undo, edit, undo, edit, undo, edit, undo. I really think I like to lower the opacity and just click, 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 click around. So this will kind of blend it in, okay? Rather than if you just kind of just click, rather than, and then we can change, like lower the brush size, increase the brush size by clicking rather than clicking and holding. It's going to give you a better look. And then also, obviously, we want to probably change the different brushes that we're using. So feel free to just change the different brushes. Okay, so kind of giving this around the edges here. This is going to kind of be mountainy. Alright, this is actually looking alright. Okay, and then I'm going to have some mountains kind of in the middle here too, but they're going to be kind of sandy, so I'm going to click on, again, make sure I click on this terrain right here. Let's click on the sandy one right here. I'm just going to dabble these things in here, so just click, kind of click around. Okay, kind of click, click, click. Alright, feel free to change that brush size, feel free to change the brush, kind of go on top. Alright, so that actually looks pretty good. So now when I play this, I kind of have the texture of my ground kind of varies. It's not all the same grass. Notice it goes from green to kind of browns to yellows in here. So it kind of all varies, which is exactly what I want. But this is still a very, very flat terrain. So the next thing I'm going to want to do is I'm still on terrain right here. I want to click on this up button right here, and this is going to allow us to either raise or lower the terrain. So I'm going to increase the brush size all the way, and I'm going to go around the edges right here, and I'm just going to kind of click and hold, okay, and I'm creating these mountains around the edges. Now it's important that, remember, before I moved, and if I dismiss that. If I click, 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 as long as I'm clicking and holding, I can make some pretty big mountains. And I want these mountains around the edges to be big enough where my character won't be able to like fall off the map. That's one of the keys to a game. You don't want your character to be able to fall off of a map. So I'm just kind of making these mountains out here in the background. We're going to kind of make these pretty tall right here. Kind of going around. Okay, maybe I want to use like this right here. This will really let me kind of make some big mountains. The more that I move this, the more that I move my mouse, the bigger the mountains that I can make. So I really want to make some big mountains. Now, these mountains right here, probably want to apply a little bit of texture to them. Alright, something like that. Okay. Alright, so now let's play this. And you can kind of see now when I play this, I see a bunch of mountains off in the background, which is perfect. But I'm on kind of flat ground right now. So hit the escape button, hit the play. I don't necessarily want to be on flat ground all the time. Alright, so I really want some really tall mountains out here in the background. Alright, there we go. Okay, so in order to kind of do that, I'm just going to kind of click on this, kind of click in the middle here, make this terrain a little bit bumpy. I can change the brush sizes. Maybe I kind of want some rocky areas, so I can kind of click in here. We just want to create some subtle terrain differences so that while we're walking around in here, there's just kind of some change in elevation. Maybe I want to kind of make like a mini mountain kind of like right in here. So I'll just kind of click over here, kind of create like a mini mountain. Maybe another mini mountain right over here, kind of. Okay, so now when I play, notice I have I'm not walking necessarily on flat ground. Now I'm kind of walking on terrain, and I can use the space bar here to jump up. So I kind of created, this is one of my mini mountains that I made right here, and I can kind of just jump around. Alright, so now I've created the terrain for one scene. What you need to do now is you're going to have to create the terrain for all three scenes. Okay, so I've created one scene right here. So if I go to my assets, okay, and I go to scenes, notice this is level 1. Oh, we want to make sure that we save. Okay, file, save scene, file, save scenes, file, save projects. Now if we go to level 2, notice there's nothing here. So we got to do the same thing that we did for level 1 on levels 2 and levels 3. So that's going to involve deleting the main camera, creating a new plane right here, terrain, okay? Then we need to go to assets, we need to go to our standard assets, go to characters, go to first person, go to prefabs, and drag this first person controller in here. And we're going to need to make sure that we place this first person controller out here, kind of in the middle area. And then you're going to obviously have to define this scene right here, you know, with all the materials and stuff. File, save scenes, and then you got to do the same thing for level 3 too. So you're going to have to go into here, scenes level 3. We need to create the 3D object, the terrain. We need to delete the camera. Okay, in here we need to make sure that we create go into our assets, go into standard assets, go into characters, first person, prefabs, drag this first person controller into here, kind of move them into the center of the terrain. Alright, so, and kind of up a little bit. So now we have, again, 3 different scenes right here. File, save scenes. If I go to my scenes, I have level 3, level 2, level 1. Level 1 obviously looks pretty good. I spent some time on that, but levels 2 and 3 do not. You need to spend some time right now working on levels 2 and 3, really kind of creating some cool terrain for those. And make sure that you play all 3 scenes to make sure that they work. So obviously this scene works for me, but I also need to go to level 2, play that scene, and make sure that this scene works. So this scene works for me, but obviously I'm just walking on white. It's not that good. Same thing for a level 3. If I double click on level 3 and hit the play button, just kind of walking around. So that's something for you to do. You need to define the scenes and add textures to level 2 and 3 for your maze game. Make sure every time you save, you go File, Save Scenes, and File, Save Project. Okay, so that is part 2 of 6 of this maze game tutorial. Let me know if you have any questions.